Well, thank you so much. That was a pleasant surprise. It almost makes up for the fact that you all will be giving official feedback. I didn't realize that, so I wasn't nervous until 5 minutes ago, and now I am. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I love portraits. I love going to portrait museums. I love drawing and painting people. I've been drawing people since I was a little kid. I set out to become a portrait artist. And some of you may have seen my landscapes and cityscapes. I love doing those. I actually probably spend more time painting portraits than I do painting landscapes and cityscapes, but I just love going back and forth. I've been teaching portrait painting for 20 years, and I'm going to do a portrait in, a sketch, the kind of demo that I would do in a classroom environment, not something that's as finished as I would do for a commissioned portrait. Or a gallery piece, but I'm going to do a portrait demo over the course of the next couple hours, and I'll try to talk my way through what I'm doing the way that I would if I were in a classroom, and just try to make this incredibly complicated thing as simple as possible for you. So please type in as many questions as you have in the chat. I think Tara's going to read them to me. I will say that the one question I won't be able to answer while I'm working is what colors are you mixing, or what colors did you just mix? Because I'm going to be mixing all of them and using all of them all the time. But I think that you have my palette. Tara mentioned that it's on my website, and in fact, I'll show you my palette in a second and just show you the colors that are on there. But first, I want to share my screen and show you a little bit about how I'm going to be working and how I'm going to be getting started. So one thing that everybody's always curious about, I know I was when I was taking art classes, is just what colors you use. So you can use any colors you want for skin tones and for anything. And there are a million different ways to make skin tones. But if you're not really sure, and or you're having a tough time getting skin tones that feel alive and vibrant, this is a good recipe to get started with. So any ethnicity, any lighting condition, what you're doing is you're dividing up what you're looking at and what you're depicting into either lights or shadows, the areas of the object, the person that are being hit by the light source, or the areas that are not being hit by the light source. And so in the lights, you can use alizarin crimson, cadmium yellow light, a tiny bit of blue, and some white. In the shadows, you can use alizarin crimson, viridian, cadmium red pale, and a tiny bit of white. The proportions of those colors, the percentages, will change depending on the light source and depending on the person's skin tones and ethnicity and all of that. But if you use these colors, you will get to where you're trying to get. So I'll be using these colors and lots of other colors too. But this might help you. This helped me a lot because it limited the amount of decisions that I had to make. Instead of 50 colors, I was dealing with 3, and 3 is a lot easier than 50. So let me explain what I'm actually going to be doing today. Like I said, you divide everything you're depicting up into lights and shadows. Where the lights and the shadows meet, where the form turns away from the light and becomes shadow, we call that area in here the transition. Okay, so within the lights, we've got highlights and midtones. Everybody can read my handwriting. Within the shadows, we have the core of the shadow, the reflected light, and the cast shadow. And then in between light and shadow, we have the transitions. Now, real life is very, very complicated, and the human eye can take in a gazillion bits of information. So when you're looking at a person or an apple or a landscape or whatever, if you can translate those gazillion bits of information into these steps, into first light and shadow, and then within that, highlights, midtone lights, transitions, the core of the shadow, the reflected light, and the cast shadow. If everything you ever paint, you're clear in your mind which of these categories it falls into, your paintings will make sense. They'll read three-dimensionally and they'll be believable. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to smear a bit of the midtone light on my canvas the way I have here. I'm going to paint into that, and I'm going to start by sketching in the proportions with the transitional colors. I'm going to push the saturation of them really far towards really vibrantly saturated colors. And then I'm probably going to start blocking in shadows and blocking in lights. The reason why I start with really saturated colors is because it's very easy to take bold, vibrant, brilliant, saturated colors and dull them down. That's really simple. It's not very simple at all to take dull, boring colors and make them vibrant and exciting. You can go one way, you can't go the other. So you might as well start really vibrant. And worst comes to worst, you wind up with a really vibrant, lifelike painting at the end. If it's too garish for you, if it looks like Candyland the way many of my paintings did for many, many years, you can always tone them down. So that's what I'm going to do. Let me switch cameras right now, and I'll show you my palette, and I'll get started.
While Gavin's doing that, I just wanted to let everybody know that those two things that Gavin just showed, the color list and the ball with the light, is in the chat if you wanted to go in there and grab them and save them to your desktop or phone.
Okay, so as I'm getting started, let me just say really quickly, the reason why I use Richardson brushes is because I started using them at one point, and then I just met Darren Richardson sometime, and I just walked up to him and gave him about a 20-minute speech about how great his brushes were and how much I loved them and how much they had improved my painting, how I could do things that I'd never done before and made everything just so much easier. And that's how my relationship with Richardson started. So I can't say enough about these brushes and the paints. The paints are great. The Plaza brand paints are Richardson brand paints. They just have the word Plaza written on them when you shop at Plaza, if I'm not mistaken, everybody. And I love them all. So this is, I'm painting on panel. It's this big. It's bigger than the painting I'm going to paint. So I have a little room to mess around, and then I'll cut it down if I like it. And if I don't get too much negative feedback on Yelp from all of you, I'll cut it down to the proportion or the composition that I like, and maybe put it in a frame. Let me show you all my palette. It is this. So you want to set your palette up. Tell you what, hold on a second. Oh, look at this intimate look at my studio. You want to set your palette up like the color wheel. Okay, you don't. I have students in my classes who have MDs and PhDs and who are titans of industry whose palettes are a disaster, and their paintings wind up being a disaster. So don't be that person. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Set it up in order of the color wheel. I'll tell you these colors in a minute, but they're all just the colors on my supply list. And then the way that I personally do it, I leave my blacks and browns and whites and grays over here in this corner. So in theory, this purple is next to this alizarin crimson. This is a slightly redder version of this color. This is a slightly bluer version of this color. So if you have 13 different greens on your palette, you start with the yellower ones and you work your way towards the bluer ones. That way, when you're painting a green tree in the yellow sunlight, as it gets lighter, you shift this way. And as it gets darker, you shift this way. Your palette's got to be organized. I mixed up, the basic colors that I'm going to use for this ahead of time, which I don't ever do. But we have such a short amount of time, and I'd like to take this as far as I possibly can. There's no point in me wasting time mixing color while we're doing this. So let me set this up and get moving. Give me just a second. So I'll try to talk my way through what I'm doing. Okay. And I think Tara will be asking me questions from time to time. Remember, I can't talk about what color I'm using. I just showed you my colors. I'm going to be using all the colors, but I'm happy to answer any questions at any time. So off I go. Just putting this down so that the paint slides a little more than it would if I was just painting on a dry canvas. I'm using a very, very, very little bit of solvents. And sometimes I do that and sometimes I don't. Okay, incidentally, doing a portrait of my friend Dara. She very graciously and valiantly volunteered to pose for this. And so I took some pictures of her and off I go. I'm planning on, all right, so I'm going to start with some really vibrant versions of the transitional colors. I'm not sure exactly how big I'm going to make this. I don't want to make it too big because it just takes longer.
Do you have tips, Gavin, for blocking in the portrait if you're doing a portrait?
Yeah, you are going to find out all of them in a few minutes.
Okay, sorry.
No. So the first thing is you just want to start as basically as possible. You don't want to start with the footballs for the eyes and, the eyelashes and the nostrils and all that. There is just no way anybody, including Michelangelo, will get all of that, those details in the right place. So start really, really simply. With a portrait, the first thing you want to do is get in the angle of the feature. So I'm telling myself, for now, here's the angle of her eyebrows. Here's the angle of her eyes. Here's the angle between the edge of her eye socket and her nose. Here is the angle of her mouth. This painting of mine is going to wind up being in this kind of general neighborhood. I'm not sure where anything is yet. The only thing I'm sure of is that I'm not sure. So I'm not going to commit to anything just quite yet. I'm just going to treat everything like a guess. And at a certain point, I'll go a little further and then a little further. And in the beginning, you're just dealing with angles and distances. You're not doing recognizable things. I tell my students, don't put anything up there that my little 7-year-old boy will be able to recognize in the beginning. You don't want recognizable noses and eyes and all that kind of thing. You just want angles and distances. One thing that's really helpful is this little device right here. The Q-tip, ladies and gentlemen, is a very, very, very helpful tool when painting. So it's really important not to kind of get stuck in one area for too long, but to skip around and to look at everything you're putting up as landmarks. You're looking for landmarks. You're not looking for things. You're looking for landmarks. Where is this in relation to that? How do I get here from there? And to just put up approximations and then just move them around every time you realize something's in the wrong place. It's great getting close to paintings by really great masters. I mean, Sargent, Michelangelo, whoever it is, you can really see them moving things around. Sometimes, I mean, extravagantly. Like there's a painting of Sargent's in the National Portrait Gallery of a guy who was the Secretary of State, where he moved his head like this much. It was over here, and he moved it over here, and he doesn't even bother to disguise it. And so I love seeing those guys. It's easy to say make mistakes, but it's really just work through the process.
Gavin,
Yes.
Beth is wondering if there's any way to zoom in on the image. I'm wondering if it's too much trouble to get the camera a little bit closer. So,
There you go.
okay. I think that'll work. Thank you.
Yep.
Gavin, Michael has a good question. He's asking what the purpose of the X is in that, I think, at the corner of that eye there.
Everything up here is an angle between one thing and another one. So this here is the angle between the corner of the eyebrow and the corner of her eye. This here is the sort of the border of the shelf of the inside of her eye socket.
I have Jill.
When I painted Senator Harry Reid's portrait, his Senate Majority Leader portrait, I was really nervous going into it because he wanted me to paint it from life. He said, I think it'll be a neat experience. I'd be happy, to pose for it. And I thought, A, well, that's great. Of course I want to do that. But B, paintings don't look that good in the very beginning. And I don't want him to like, kind of lose faith that he chose the wrong artist or something. And I was talking to the great portrait painter, Daniel Green. And I said this to him and I was like, and I said, he wants me to paint it from life. And I'm really excited to do that. And Daniel Green at the time must have been 82, 85. And he's this sort of, the few times that I've met him, he struck me as like a kind of like tough guy from New York. He's a little guy, but a tough guy from New York. He had that demeanor about him. And when I said he wants me to paint it from life, and he started laughing and he goes, okay, because he knew exactly what I was talking about. And he goes, okay, so this is what you have to do. You have to involve him in the process. You have to get him to understand what the process is like. And when you do, then it'll be fine. And I was like, that's a great idea. So I explained everything to Senator Reed, and and he was cool with it. But it was nerve-wracking at first. So
How long does it take for someone to sit for a portrait?
So it took me a lot longer to paint the portrait than the time that I had with him in life, but he was really generous. He gave me 8 2-hour sessions with him in the Capitol, which was really, it was a really nice experience. And we'd schedule our sittings around Washington Nationals baseball games. And his staff would wheel in a TV and he'd watch baseball and I'd paint. We got to be great friends.
Well, of course.
Cool.
I love that so much.
It was awesome.
Okay. Ask for her first and last name.
I'm sorry, Gavin, if you addressed this already, but is there a reason that you're doing your sketch in blue? Is it just because it's complementary, or?
Yes, it's a very, very saturated version of the transition color. The transitions are where the light is striking the very least directly. So that's where the cool colors show up in human skin. And I'm pushing the saturation of this cool color as far as I can. So towards, just like fluorescent cerulean blue. And so help me paint something. First of all, it's just going to look awesome. So that's the main reason. But it's just going to help me paint something that's more vibrant and exciting. Okay. Real life and human skin tones are vibrant and they're not brown. They're not dull. They're in motion and they're full of blood and they're full of passion and excitement. And to convey that with these ground up rocks that we're using, smeared on a hard surface, I think it's very helpful to paint with really vibrant colors. All right, so I wanted to do this with as little paint as possible in a few places. What am I doing? Hold on. It's not that easy to talk and do this at the same time. Okay. In a few places, there's a little more paint on here than I would like, so it's much easier to paint into paint with as little paint as possible. So I'm going to scrape some of this off and make another pass. So this is my first pass of trying to work out the proportions. I'm going to make a second pass. I'm actually going to talk less because this is kind of important, but I'll happily answer any questions you have. All right, good. So these two colors are going to work out well as transitional colors, especially when I paint other colors into them.
She will have to make her.
All right, well, you just reminded me of the first portrait I did in high school, and I brought it to my art teacher, and he looks at it, and he's like, the drawing is good, but you used burnt umber and white, didn't you?
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah, it's a disaster.
Yep, and then he proceeded to show me the correct formula. Yeah.
Yeah, famously, when I met Nelson Shanks, he gave a speech downtown, and I went to it. It was awesome. He's showing all of his portraits of, Princess Diana and the Pope and all these great people. And it was great. And I went up to him afterwards. We talked for a few minutes, and I said, one of the main things, he was like my guy when I was first starting to paint. He was the first artist whose work I saw that I thought was real, that was alive, that I thought was really exciting, but that I understood what he was doing. And I said to him, I think it's one of my main takeaways from your work is that you don't use brown. And when I said the word brown, he, comically flinched, like, whoa. And I said, you mix green and orange and red and purple together and they make brown. And he sort of went, yeah, that's right. There's no brown. Don't use brown. And fortunately, I had teachers who really stressed color. And they were just, they were like, yeah, get rid of the brown. There's no brown. I mean, if you're going to mix brown, and I had plenty of brown on my palette for the
oh yeah,
for the shadows, but make your own brown, because it's either warm brown or cool brown, really rich brown or really desaturated brown. I mean, don't make it just whatever comes out of the burnt umber hue. Get those colors that I put on there, alizarin crimson and cadmium red pale and all that stuff, and make your own brown. I don't know if Dara is here watching, but Dara, I hope you weren't too worried at first, and I hope you already feel a little better here. I know if somebody were painting my portrait and I looked the way I did when this was all blue, I'd be a little worried. So this is how I try to do everything. I'm just doing it very kind of obviously right now, but I try to put down approximations of the proportions and the placement, and then go over it and go, okay, how can I improve this? And all the artists I admire, you can just see them doing it in all their work. So I think one of the mistakes that beginners make is they'll do sort of an under sketch, and then they'll kind of treat that like a coloring book, and they'll color it in. And if you can make your proportions, that initial sketch, the work in progress, so that whatever you're doing, you're constantly modifying that, and with more investigation, you're just making it better and better. You'll learn a lot, and you'll wind up with a painting that's better at the end than at the beginning, which is kind of the point. So try to put landmarks up in relation to each other. That's why you draw with straight lines. So you can go, okay, from the corner here, where's the corner here? It's there. And then there's this angle. And then there's this angle. Okay. Remember, I'm not doing anything right now. Take the pressure off of yourself. This is a really big one. Take all the pressure off of yourself to do something good. So nothing that I'm doing right now will be visible for the viewer by the time I'm done. So everything I'm doing, I can mess up as much as I want, and the viewer's never going to see it. That's the whole point of the beginning of a painting is I don't know where everything is. I'm trying to figure it out. And I want to give myself the leeway to mess up a bunch and have it not really matter.
Gavin, Joyce is asking if you're adding white with the Q-tip or just removing. Are you pulling up?
No, I'm just removing paint.
That's what I thought, but I did not want to. So that means it's a very cool additional drawing tool. And I mean,
it's a great
using it for so many reasons, like in applications right now. It's cool to watch.
We'll leave that alone for a second. I need the nose to figure out the eye. Remember, everything I'm doing is just me trying to figure out where things are. I'm not worried about what things look like. Just trying to figure out where things are. So you're always triangulating things. You're always going, if A is B, if A is here and B is here, where is C? So I've only just started wearing glasses, and I didn't realize that I don't have my glasses on. So now I have them on. We'll see if this gets better or worse. If it gets worse, then I'm going to take them off. I'm trying to figure this whole thing out.
Five.
That is a frustrating realization when you get to the point that you realize that you need them.
It's kind of hilarious. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's not something we want, but nice that they figured out, you know, how to help a little.
For sure, because I'm always like, oh yeah, that's so much better. Anything you can say about your decision making while you're going through this? Jane's asking if you could share, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at angles and distances and trying to put them up in relation to each other. So if the back of the nose is here, where's the bottom of her eyelid? You know, if this bit of the wing of the nose is here, where's the corner of her eye? If I've told myself, and what's really important is that you have to know what you're going to keep and what you're going to move. So I'm keeping a running tally of what I'm going to keep and what I'm going to move. So I'm keeping the height of her eyebrows and the length of her nose. And right now I'm shifting some of this stuff to fit this and this. It's sort of like if you've ever hung a picture without a tape measure and just kind of looked at one wall and at the other, and then looked in the middle and gone, all right, I'm an artist, I can figure out where the halfway point is, and tried to kind of plot out where the halfway point is on the wall between the wall on the left and the wall on the right. It's like that. You're just going, okay, if the top of this is here, where's this in relation to this and that?
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. So for instance, you never want to draw anything just all together. Like I'm not going to draw her lips, like a line around her lips the way I would if I were a cartoonist. I'm going to go, okay, if I know where the corner of her mouth is, the corner of her nose, where's the corner of her mouth? It's about here. Where's this landmark in relation to that landmark? And then I can go, okay, if I know where this is, where is the bow of her lips? It's like, yeah, it's kind of where I had it. And then what's this angle is like that, and then so forth. And so by placing the corner of her lips, not based on where I put it before with the blue in my first shot, but based on the nearest available landmark, which is the corner of her nose there, on my second shot, I'm putting it in based on more information that I've gathered rather than less information in the beginning. And so in theory, at least, that'll make it more accurate. And you start with big angles and then you go for small angles. So I'm missing this angle. I had 2 angles for her lower eyelid, and now I have 3, if not 4. That helps me figure out that all the landmarks on this side are slightly higher than the ones on this side. So I've got to bring this up a little bit. Now, I'm not going to spend all day long, like just doing this. But if you want a likeness, this is sort of how you do it. You just start with big shapes, and then you work towards smaller and smaller and smaller ones. And at a certain point, you get your proportions where you want them to be, and you've got the likeness, and you've got the look on the person's face, and their body language, and everything. So what I'm putting up now, I used to, my teachers used to go, you're putting in the eyes too early. And I would say, how can you possibly do a face without the eyes? But what I'm doing is I'm just trying to find any landmarks that'll help me figure out the proportions. I'm not putting up, you know, eyes because they're there or anything because it's there. I'm trying to just I'm saying to myself, I don't know where anything is. I'm trying to figure it out. And these things that I have so far, those are the things that are going to help me figure this out. So like her ear, right? You can actually see enough of her earlobe to make it interesting. It'd be easier if it was just hair, but I like that little bit of her ear right there. So I'm gonna try and work that out. All right, so let me do it in blue instead of red. It's a little lighter. So let's see. So most of the time I do this in my head, but do it on your paper, and it'll really help a lot. Let me just fix the corner of her eye a little bit. So from there, like that. Okay, so from the corner of her eye, the angle to corner of her earlobe is like this. All right? Yeah, more or less. All right, from the corner of her mouth, it's like this. And then from her nose, I need something straight. From her nose, it's across from about here. Well, that's good. Now I know where her ear is. Ears are notoriously difficult to get in the right place. And by looking at it compared to 3 different landmarks, rather than just kind of eyeballing it and hoping for the best, I have a much better chance of success. Okay. So for now, it's there. This will help with all of this. now that I know where her jaw is, I can get rid of it. I want her hair coming down like this. I think that's gonna look nice. Got this lock, it's going like this.
Ooh, great question, Gavin. You ready?
Uh-oh. Hit
All right.
me.
I'm curious how many brushes are being used. Is he using a different brush for each color value change? I was wondering the same thing because I keep seeing new shapes appear.
So what I basically do most of the time is whatever shape and size brush I want, I have two of them going, one for warm colors and one for cool colors. That's more or less it. So if I'm painting a person, I'll have like, you know, two brushes going of each size, one for light and one for shadow.
And then are you just wiping your brush if you're changing colors?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have this in my left hand, paper
Aha.
towel, other brushes, and then the brush I'm using in my right hand.
Now, can you just put your hand with the brushes between your fingers back up in front of the screen?
Sure, just a sec.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you're holding at least 3 brushes at once. Yeah. Yeah, very typical. Okay, got it.
And usually there's like, you know, 7 or 8 in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as I end up gathering them or collecting them until I look and I'm like, I can't hold any.
Right.
I gotta figure it out. Oh, Dara's got a good one too. Tips for cleaning brushes.
Oh, that is key. You got to be really cleaning brushes. Washing your brushes at the end of the day is one of the keys to being a successful artist, and dare I say, leading an enriched life. Because you can have the greatest brushes in the world, but if you don't take care of them, you know, a week later they're just done, and you have to either go buy new ones or use beat up old brushes that don't work very well. So if you can paint all day long and not use any solvents or anything, but if you wash your brushes at the end of the day, which is something I really enjoy doing because that's when I get to, you know, watch TV or listen to podcasts or do whatever I want, then you keep them in great shape. And these brushes, I mean, these Richardson brushes last forever. Like some of the sharpest brushes that I use all day, every day, are years old. And I just wash them every night, and it's great. You know, people come into my classes with these just disastrous brushes that are never going to work, you know, that Michelangelo wouldn't be able to paint. So don't be that person.
And do you have a particular method that you use? Like, do you use a silicoil jar? Do you use any brush cleaners or just solvent?
Well, Richardson makes one that's really, really good. And when I have that, I definitely use that. And when I'm out, I try to get more, but I have been known to use just, you know, a bar of soap or dishwashing soap or whatever. Okay. Let me just remove, so I'm done with that step. Now I'm gonna make another pass. Let me just remove any excess paint. In fact, I'll probably do this one again. By the way, if you wanna just get to the point where you're not afraid to mess up, you can paint with confidence, do this. It's so good for you. Both for this particular painting, because it's easier to paint when there's not a ton of paint up there, but also for your confidence. You don't want to paint scared. You want to paint with confidence. Okay, I'm going to make a third pass now. This time with the shadow color. So I took my first shot at proportions and improved it. Now I'm going to take my second shot at proportions and improve that. Should go a little darker in here. That's not actually, on my palette, it's much darker than that purplish color, but in reality, it's not. It's one of those things. So I'll go for a little bit of a darker color. I mean, we're talking about the washing the brushes. Like, one day I will be to the point where I can have an assistant do it for me. And that's when I'll know that I've really arrived.
Gavin, are you worried about letting the underpainting dry before going over it? Is that something you would normally do?
No. No, this is oil paint. I mean, this will be wet. The underpainting will be wet for, days at least. And I like that because it's going to be incorporated into the painting as a whole. Now, a lot of times when I do commission portraits, I will do what I've just done, lock in the likeness and the expression, and then let that dry so that when I'm really painting it, I can paint freely and know that every time I mess something up, it's just, you're constantly in the state of messing everything up. It'll be fine, and I can get the likeness back and the posture and all of that stuff. But if I'm just doing a painting to paint it, if I'm not real, because portraits, big part of it is likeness and expression. I mean, it's hard enough to get somebody's likeness, and then their smile isn't quite there, or their posture should look really strong, but it looks, it doesn't, it's not quite what you want. So I like to lock that stuff in before I go too far. So look, I just moved the top of her cheek over this far to the right. So with each bit of investigation, you're getting more and more accurate and more confident. I should say I have a mirror behind me, and I'm always checking my work in the mirror. You can really see your mistakes in the mirror. And once I started painting with a mirror behind me, I figured that out by accident, by the way, when I walked by it in high school with a painting that I thought was awesome, and it looked terrible in the mirror. I couldn't figure out why that was. And the reason is because in the mirror, it looks the way it looks to the rest of the world. In person, all of our biases make it seem like whatever we're doing is accurate and is what we want. And in the mirror, you kind of see the way it looks to the rest of humanity. So look at your work in the mirror and you go, oh, her eye is too far over, or, whatever the situation may be. You see all your drawing mistakes. So for instance, right now I see that her eyebrow on this side needs to move up that way a little bit. So that's the kind of thing the mirror is really helpful for. Let's see from here. Yeah. Gosh, how did I miss that?
Nancy has a great question. Um, so can you also take a picture to determine adjustments?
Yeah, that helps too. Even just looking at it on your camera helps. Turning it upside down helps. Getting across the room helps. I mean, in an ideal world, when I paint portraits, um, I do all those things while I'm working, and then if the deadline isn't such that I can't do this, I'll just take a few weeks off of it, and then look at it, preferably after a whole bunch of glasses of wine on a Saturday night, and that's what really helps. Like if your head is totally clear of having looked at it all day every day, um, if you don't look at it for a couple weeks and then you turn it around from the wall, you go, oh my gosh, how did I let this situation happen? I've got to move his hand, and like his neck is too thick, and or you go, oh, that's it, I got it. Okay, good. So this shadow here is too far over to the left, but it's also too thin for me to really mess with right now. So I'm just gonna kind of file that away and fix it when I block the lights in a minute. In fact, no time like the present, so I might as well do that now. All right, now I'm going to start blocking the lights in. I spent enough time figuring out the proportions and the shadows. Now I'm going to see if, as fast as possible, so I've got 35 minutes. Now I'm going to see how far I can get within the lights and just try and turn this into something. I'll really deal with the transitions in a couple minutes.
Hey, Gavin.
Hi.
Hi. Nancy is wondering if you sometimes leave the purples and blue for interest.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll be peeking through.
Yeah, you could definitely see how they contribute around that right eye where you finished it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good. How are you doing? I actually don't know how I've done this, but I have Teams and Zoom going at the same time. Let's see if
Jessica, you need to mute yourself. Michael would like to know if you're thinning the paint down now, if you're still just mixing.
No, not at all. This is very thick paint.
I actually don't remember. Did you say if you use any mediums or solvents?
I used some solvent at the beginning.
Okay. Gavin.
Yes.
Santo wants to know if you do landscape, and I'm letting them know that you do, yes, of course, and beautiful streetscapes, but I want to put your website address in here. So you remind me.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just Gavin Glakas at yahoo.com. I mean, sorry, that's my email address. It's www.gavinglakas.com.
Okay. And it's Glakas, not Glakas.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Oh my God. Thank you so much, because I've been saying it wrong for like the past 15 years.
That's all right. Everybody has.
Apologize.
It's all right. It's sort of spelled wrong.
What solvent do you use? Michelle is asking.
Gamsol.
Gamsol.
Okay, 25 minutes. Not messing around.
Clearly not.
Oh. Okay, I have 3 more minutes. It's about, I could use a few more, but I'm going to try and clean this thing up as much as I can in 3 minutes. Okay, last couple strokes. Quick shadow in her hair, and then I'll call it a day. Okay.
Hey,
I'll put in
Gavin,
the
one
whites of her
thing,
eyes and then call it. What's that?
don't forget the ear. That's what Judy wants you to do.
Hang on, let me just throw in the white of her eye, and then we'll call it a day.
Oh, and then actually there's a good question here about why you're using alizarin crimson even though it's a fugitive color.
It's a great color. It's as blue or red as you're gonna get, and having cool reds, and warm greens, and it's just a great color for skin tones. Because skin tones, you're essentially making peach, right? But if you just use, this is a disaster. If you just use, I don't know, reds that are in the middle of the kind of red spectrum, you don't have the full range. But if you can, you want a red that's kind of as close to purple as you can get. I don't mind fugitive colors. That's fine with me.
It takes a while, right?
So I can work on this you know, a lot longer. But this is about where I'll call it, since we're supposed to end at 3. Oh gosh, it's 3:04. Does anybody
You're
else have any
fine.
questions?
You're fine.
Anybody else have any questions?
We've got a lot of positive comments about how much people enjoyed the class in the chat. So that was
That's good.
fantastic. I was mesmerized the whole time. You could tell by how many
Thank you.
people stuck around for the whole thing that you know.
Good.
So we do have Barb would like to know if you'd critique this as it is, or I guess
If I would critique my painting as it is?
yeah, like I think that's her question.
Sure. I spent most of my time working out the drawing and not quite that much time painting. So I didn't have a chance. I didn't time this right. The truth is, I don't think I've ever done a demo from a photograph before. During COVID, I did demos from master copies, but we didn't really work with photos. So I've painted from photos a gazillion times in my life, but I don't think I've ever painted from a photo in front of anybody before. And I don't have a real good, I didn't have a good sense at all of how long anything would take me. I should have done this smaller so that I could have put more work into her hair. And really, so I could have taken everything a little farther. Like if I had taken her eyes and her hair a little farther, this might be closer to what might be termed like a finished sketch. As it is, you know, it's not quite what might be termed a finished sketch. But I would rather have the drawing work out than anything else. So yeah, I don't know, as a critique, like her hair is kind of not quite as finished as her face. You know, I'd like to have gone farther with her eyes, you know, just because that's the thing that everybody notices. So I should have done this painting smaller. Here's how big this painting is, right? I should have done it smaller. So there's my critique.
That's great. Really quick, the small brushes that you're using for detail, how small are you going, like on the actual number on the brush?
So I have one, I only used it a little bit, a very little bit. It's a size, well, I don't know what size it is because everything is rubbed off of it.
Yeah, of
But
course,
it's pretty
right?
small.
That happens. Yeah.
Here is, where's my, there we go.
Oh, that's a tiny filbert, right? Or is that a bright? I can't, it's hard for me.
It's a flat, that's a, yeah,
Flat?
it's either,
Okay.
yeah, it's a bright.
Okay. That looks like an aught or a 1. So,
Yeah, it's actually, it's an aught. There's a 0. It looked
there
like
is, so that's
there's
an
a bunch
aught.
of
Yeah,
things
that's pretty small.
rubbed
That's
off.
about as small as they come. Sometimes you get oil painting brushes in a 2-aught, but that's it. And Arlette, well, looking at what Gavin was holding, he really does have a fairly wide range. And so Gavin, if someone was, I put your brush mix in the chat earlier, you know, and you do use a wide range of brushes. I don't think there's any way really to get around that. You know, you have to figure out what works for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll tell you what, here are my brushes.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so those are the brushes that I use on a regular basis.
Okay.
And then I have a bunch of others in the closet that I kind of break out every once in a while.
Right.
When I need something beat up and scrappy.
So funny. Okay. All right. Well, I think we can take this last one from Sarah. This is so great. But Sarah's asking, when you do commission portraits, do you always work both from life and photos, or with some people only from photos? Why one way or the other?
It just depends how much time the person has. A lot of people don't have time. You know, kids can't pose from life, and a lot of grown-ups just don't have time. So yeah, I work from photos a lot. But if I can get even like an hour with the person to do a color study, then that's really, really helpful.
And is it just the depth perception that you get when you're in person that is this so much greater than you can get with a photograph? Oh,
It's that, and as a degree of that, the values, because the values are all overblown in photos. All the mediums look either too dark or too light, but it's also, excuse me, the color. I mean, at this point, I can kind of make up color if I need to, but the skin tones are just so much subtler. There's so many subtle little colors in there that you see in life that don't exist in photographs. So even spending an hour just kind of doing the roughest, quickest painting of the person's face will help so much, because then you look at the photograph that you took under the same conditions and you see all the differences. And so you can remember, oh, okay, in those transitions, it's a lot lighter, and those shadows are a lot lighter, and they're a lot warmer. And these lights over here are a lot darker, and they're redder, they're less yellow. You know, you kind of, you constantly come back to the colors in the color study for the actual painting.
that makes a lot of sense. All right. That's great. Okay, well, thank you so much, Gavin. This was truly such a treat, a real pleasure.
You're welcome. Let me turn my camera around so I can say goodbye to everybody.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, and I hope that everybody had a great time. We're gonna go and end. Gavin, I hope we will see you again on our screen fairly soon, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thank you, Gavin, so much. Really loved it.
That was great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.